The phone rang at 11:47 p.m., and I knew before I answered that my life was about to break open. "Ma'am, this is Officer Martinez with the downtown precinct. We have a child here who says his name is Timothy, and he says you're his grandmother." The officer's voice was careful, trained. "We found him alone outside the Velvet Room on Harrison Street." My hands went cold. The Velvet Room. That was the nightclub in the worst part of town. The place where shootings made the news every few months, where drug deals happened in plain sight, where a grown man wouldn't walk alone after dark, and they found my 3-year-old grandson there. "Where is his grandfather?" I heard myself ask, though my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "My husband, Robert. He was supposed to be watching Timothy tonight." There was a pause. The kind of pause that means the answer is worse than the question. "Ma'am, according to the security footage, an older gentleman matching your husband's description brought the child to the location, walked him to the entrance, and left him there. The child was alone for approximately 17 minutes before club security noticed him and called us." I sat down hard on the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinet where I keep my good mixing bowls. 17 minutes. My baby boy standing in the cold November night, surrounded by drunks and dealers and God knows what else, for 17 minutes. Friend, before I tell you what I found when I went to get Timothy that night, please tap subscribe. Stay with me, so you'll see what happened when I finally understood the terrible game being played with my family. I need you to hear this whole story, because what started as a business disagreement became something so much darker. Let me go back 3 weeks, to the Sunday afternoon when this nightmare really began. My son, Kevin, came to my house with his wife, Sarah, and little Timothy. They'd been doing that more often lately. Family visits that felt less like love and more like strategy sessions. I'd built Rosa's bakery from nothing over 32 years. Started with farmers' market tables, grew into a small storefront, and now I had 3 locations across the city. The business was mine, my recipes, my reputation, my sweat. Kevin had been asking me to sign it over to him for the past year, said I was getting too old to handle it. Said he had expansion plans and modern marketing strategies. But I knew what he really had. Debt from a failed real estate venture, and a wife who liked expensive things more than she liked working for them. That Sunday, Sarah barely let me hug Timothy before she started. "Mum Rosa, we need to talk seriously about your succession planning." She always called me Mom Rosa, with this bright, fake warmth that made my teeth hurt. "Kevin and I have been looking at the bakery's books." "You've been looking at my books?" I kept my voice level, but my hand tightened on the coffee pot. Kevin jumped in, using that soft voice he'd practiced since childhood, the one that used to get him out of trouble. "Ma, we're just trying to help. Dad agrees with us. Don't you, Dad?" My husband Robert sat in his usual chair by the window, staring out at the oak tree in our front yard. He didn't answer right away. That had been happening more lately. These long pauses before he spoke, like he had to travel a great distance to find his words. "I... yes," he finally said. "I think they're right, Rosa. It's too much for you now." Something about the way he said it felt wrong. Not like disagreement, or even like he believed it. More like he was reading lines someone else had written. But I pushed that feeling aside and said what I'd been saying for months. "I'm not signing over my life's work. Not to anyone. When I'm ready to retire, we'll talk. Until then, the answer is no." Sarah's smile went sharp. "That's unfortunate, Mum Rosa, because family is supposed to take care of family, and when family won't do the right thing..." She let the sentence hang there, picked up her purse and called to Timothy. "Come on, baby. Grandma's tired." They left, and the house felt colder than it should have. Robert stayed in his chair by the window. I went to him, put my hand on his shoulder. "You don't really think I should give them the bakery, do you?" He looked up at me, and for just a moment, his eyes were my Robert again. The man who'd held my hand through every hard year, who'd taste-tested every recipe, who'd believed in me when I was just a woman with a dream and a KitchenAid mixer. "I don't know what I think anymore, Rosa," he whispered. "Some days I can't remember what I thought yesterday." I should have heard the fear in those words. I should have understood what he was really telling me. But I was angry about Kevin and Sarah, distracted by business stress, and I just kissed his forehead and told him it would be okay. That was 3 weeks ago. In the days that followed, Robert got worse. He'd forget where he put his keys, then forget he'd been looking for them. He'd start a sentence and lose it halfway through. Once, I found him standing in our garage at 2 in the morning, fully dressed, holding his car keys, with no memory of why he'd come out there. "Maybe we should see Dr. Patterson," I suggested gently. "I'm fine," he snapped, which wasn't like him. "Stop treating me like I'm broken." The night they called me about Timothy, Robert had offered to watch the boy while Kevin and Sarah went to some charity dinner. I'd been at the bakery, handling a crisis with a broken oven at our downtown location. When I got home at 10:30, Robert and Timothy were gone. Just gone. Robert's car in the driveway, Robert's phone on the kitchen counter, no note, nothing. I'd started calling Kevin when the police rang. Now I drove downtown to get Timothy, my whole body shaking. Officer Martinez met me at the precinct, a kind-faced woman who kept calling me honey and bringing Timothy juice boxes. My grandson ran to me, buried his face in my coat, and sobbed. He smelled like cigarette smoke and spilled beer and fear. "Grandpa Bob took me for a ride," Timothy whispered. "He said we were going for ice cream, but then we went to the loud place with the bright lights. He told me to wait by the door. He said Daddy would come get me. But Daddy didn't come, Grandma. Nobody came, and I was scared and people were yelling and—" I held him tighter and promised him he was safe now. That was all I could do. Officer Martinez pulled me aside. "Mrs. Chen, I have to ask, is there any chance your husband was impaired? The footage shows some erratic behavior before he left the scene." "Impaired?" My voice came out harder than I meant. "My husband doesn't drink. He doesn't do drugs. He would never hurt this child." But even as I said it, I knew something was terribly wrong. I took Timothy home, put him in our guest bed, and sat with him until he finally fell asleep with his little hand gripping my finger. Then I went looking for Robert. I found him in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. "Robert, where have you been?" "The police found Timothy alone at a nightclub." "A nightclub, Robert? What were you thinking?" He looked at me with the most lost expression I've ever seen on a human face. Rosa, I don't remember going anywhere with Timothy. Kevin called me this afternoon and told me to pick the boy up. I remember that. But after that," he pressed his hands to his temples. "There's nothing there. It's just gone." I sat down next to him, and a terrible understanding started to creep through me. "Robert, what else have you forgotten?" His hands were shaking. "Last week, Kevin told me I'd promised to co-sign a loan for him. I don't remember promising that. But I must have, because he had papers with my signature on them. And Sarah said I told her you'd agreed to sell the bakery. I don't remember saying that either. But they were so sure, Rosa. They showed me text messages from my phone. Messages I don't remember sending. My blood went ice cold. "Where's your phone now?" "Kevin has it. He said I kept losing it, so he'd hold on to it for me. Keep it safe." I stood up fast. Something was happening here. Something calculated and cruel. "Wait here," I told Robert. I went to his study, the small room where he kept his books and his desk and his old college notebooks. I started looking through drawers, not sure what I was searching for until I found it. A leather journal I'd never seen before, hidden under a stack of financial documents. I opened it to the first page, and my hands started shaking. The entries were in Robert's handwriting, but scattered, confused. Different pens, different dates, notes that made no sense. Asterisk Tuesday. Kevin says I forgot Rosa's birthday. Must have. She was so upset. Need to make it up to her. But I'd never been upset about my birthday. Kevin had lied to him. Asterisk Friday. Sarah showed me the bakery books, the red numbers. Rosa's hiding debt from me, trying to protect me. Need to convince her to let Kevin help before it's too late. There was no debt. The bakery was thriving. Another lie. Asterisk Sunday. I told Rosa about Timothy's fall at school. She said it never happened. Am I losing my mind? Can't trust my own memories anymore. Timothy had never fallen at school. Kevin and Sarah were feeding him false memories, watching him forget, using his confusion to make him doubt himself. And then, on the last page with writing, dated yesterday. Asterisk. Kevin says I need to do something to make Rosa understand. Something that will show her she needs family help. He'll tell me what when the time is right. I trust my son. I'm so confused, but I trust my son. I stood there in Robert's study, holding that journal, understanding finally breaking over me like a wave. My son and his wife had been weaponizing my husband's failing memory. They'd been manipulating him, planting suggestions, making him do things he'd never do, all to terrorize me into giving up my bakery. They'd turned my husband into a puppet. And tonight, they'd made him abandon our grandson in the most dangerous way possible, as a message to me. The question that burned in my mind was simple. How far would they go? I was about to find out the answer was further than I could possibly imagine. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with Robert's journal open in front of me, reading those confused entries over and over, each one a small knife cutting into my heart. By dawn, I had a plan. First, I called Dr. Patterson's office the moment they opened and made an emergency appointment for Robert. Then I called my lawyer, Marcus Webb, a man I'd known since he was a young attorney helping me file my first business license. Marcus, I need you to review every document Robert has signed in the past 6 months. Every single one. And I need you to do it today. His voice went serious. Rosa, what's going on? My family is stealing my husband's mind, I said, and I need to know what else they've stolen. At 9 o'clock, I woke Robert gently and told him we were going to see the doctor. He was scared. I could see it in his eyes. But he nodded. I know something's wrong with me, Rosa. I'm not crazy. I know I'm forgetting things. Important things. I held his hand. We're going to figure this out together. Dr. Patterson ran tests. Memory tests, cognitive assessments, blood work. Robert struggled through them, getting frustrated when he couldn't remember words he'd used his whole life, when simple patterns confused him. After 2 hours, Dr. Patterson called me into his office alone. Rosa, I'm going to be direct with you. Robert is showing clear signs of early onset dementia, likely Alzheimer's. Based on what I'm seeing, this has been progressing for at least 8 to 12 months. The room tilted. 8 to 12 months. Almost a year of my husband slipping away, and I'd been too busy, too distracted, too focused on the bakery to see it. Why didn't he tell me? I whispered. Many patients hide it at first. They're ashamed, frightened. And in Robert's case, Dr. Patterson hesitated. Rosa, Has anyone close to him been giving him instructions or suggestions regularly? Because some of his memory gaps seem almost directed, like specific memories have been overwritten or confused deliberately. I showed him the journal. Dr. Patterson's face went dark as he read. This is abuse, Rosa. Medical abuse. Someone has been gaslighting a dementia patient. That's not just cruel, it's criminal. I left the doctor's office with a diagnosis, a prescription, and a fury burning so hot I could barely see straight. Marcus called me as I was driving Robert home. Rosa, you need to sit down for this. I'm driving. Just tell me. Robert co-signed a $200,000 business loan for Kevin 3 months ago. The loan is in default. The creditors are coming after Robert's assets, which includes the house you both own. And there's more. Robert signed a power of attorney document giving Kevin full authority to make medical and financial decisions on his behalf if Robert is deemed incapacitated. I nearly drove off the road. When? When did he sign that? The document is dated 6 weeks ago. It was notarized at Kevin's real estate office. 6 weeks ago, right after I'd refused to hand over the bakery for the 3rd time. They'd been building their trap carefully, legally, making sure that when Robert's condition became public, they'd have complete control over him, and through him, control over me. I got Robert settled at home with his medication, told him I'd be back soon, and drove straight to Kevin's house in the suburbs. Sarah's luxury SUV was in the driveway, the house they'd bought with money they didn't have, trying to look successful while drowning in debt. I didn't knock. I used the key they'd given me for emergencies. That key was about to have its only real emergency use. They were in the kitchen, Kevin at the table with his laptop, Sarah making herself some fancy coffee with their expensive espresso machine. They both looked up when I walked in, and for just a second, I saw it. The flash of surprise, then the quick recovery, the masks sliding back into place. "Mom!" Kevin stood up, that false warmth flooding his voice. "We were just about to call you. How's Timothy? We felt terrible that Dad got confused last night." "Stop," I said. The word came out like a gunshot. "Stop lying. I know what you've been doing." Sarah set down her coffee cup slowly. "I'm not sure what you mean, Mum Rosa." "I mean, I know about your father's dementia. I know you've been using it to manipulate him. I know about the journal where he writes down all the false memories you've been planting. I know about the power of attorney you had him sign. I know about the loan. I know everything." The masks cracked. Kevin's face went pale, but Sarah's went hard. "You can't prove any of that," Sarah said. "I have his journal. I have his medical diagnosis. I have a lawyer who's very interested in how a man with documented cognitive impairment signed legal documents in your office, Kevin. Documents that benefit you." Kevin found his voice, and it came out defensive, whining, like he was 12 years old again, caught in a lie. "We were trying to help. You wouldn't listen. You're too proud to see that you need us. So we had to make you understand. By using your father's dying mind as a weapon? By making him abandon his grandson in front of a nightclub." My voice broke. "How could you do this to him? He's your father, Kevin. He taught you to ride a bike. He paid for your college. He held you when you cried. And you turned him into a puppet to steal from me." Sarah stepped forward, and there was something dangerous in her eyes now. Something that told me I still didn't understand how deep this went. "You want to talk about using people, Rosa? Let's talk about using people." Her voice was ice. "Let's talk about abandonment. Let's talk about the family you left behind before you became the great Rosa Chen, bakery queen." My heart stopped. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" Sarah pulled out her phone, tapped it a few times, and held it up to show me a photograph. It was old, faded, from another lifetime. A young woman, barely 20, holding a baby boy. Next to her stood a young man with his arm around her shoulders. Behind them, two older children, a girl about 5 and a boy about 3. The young woman in the photo was me. Me at 21, with a different last name, a different life, a different family. A family I'd walked away from 33 years ago. Where did you get that? My voice came out as a whisper. Kevin stood up, and his face was different now. Not my son's face. Harder. Colder. A stranger's face. That's the thing, Mum. Sarah didn't get that photo. I did. From my half-brother. The one you abandoned when he was 6 months old. The one who grew up without a mother because you decided you wanted a different life. The room was spinning. I reached out for the counter to steady myself. His name is Marcus, Kevin continued. Not Marcus Webb, your lawyer Marcus, Marcus Chen, your firstborn son, the one you never told me about, the one you erased from your history when you met Dad and started your perfect new life. I couldn't breathe. Marcus, my baby boy. I'd held him only once in the hospital before the social worker took him. My first marriage had been violent, desperate, ending in a shelter with 3 children I couldn't feed and a husband who'd disappeared. I'd been drowning, breaking, and I'd made a choice that haunted me every single day. I'd given up my baby for adoption, left my 2 older children with my mother in another state, changed my name, and started over. Built a new life. Found Robert. Had Kevin. Buried my past so deep I sometimes convinced myself it had never happened. But the past doesn't stay buried. It comes back. It always comes back. Marcus tracked me down 2 years ago, Kevin said. He told me everything. About how you left him. About how his adoptive parents were cruel. About how he spent his whole life wondering why his mother didn't want him. And then he showed me something else. Sarah tapped her phone again. Another photo. A little boy with bright eyes and dark curls, sitting on a swing. Timothy. Timothy isn't Sarah's son, Kevin said. He's Marcus's son. Your actual grandson. The grandson you have a biological connection to. And Marcus asked me for a favor. He asked me to give you a chance to love his child the way you never loved him. To see if you'd protect Timothy, fight for him, keep him safe. My legs gave out. I sat down hard on the kitchen floor. And then, Kevin's voice was shaking now, he asked me to show you what abandonment feels like. To make you feel the terror of having a child left alone in danger. To make you understand what you did to him. Sarah crouched down to my level, her voice soft and poisonous. Last night wasn't about the bakery, Mom Rosa. Last night was about making you feel what Marcus felt, what your other children felt, making you know what it's like to have someone you love thrown away like garbage. I looked up at my son, my second son, the one I'd raised, the one I'd thought I knew, and saw a stranger. How long have you been planning this? 2 years, Kevin said, since Marcus found me. At first I didn't believe him, but he had documents, birth certificates, photos, hospital records, everything. And then I got to know him, got to hear his story, and I realized my whole life was built on a lie. My perfect mother was a woman who abandoned her children when they became inconvenient. It wasn't like that, I whispered. I was 21. I was alone. I was being hurt. And you left them anyway, Kevin shouted. You saved yourself and left them behind. So yes, Mum, we've been planning this. The bakery pressure was just the stage dressing. The real plan was to make you feel what they felt. Dad's condition just made it easier to execute. I couldn't speak, couldn't think. 33 years of running, and my past had caught up with me in the cruelest way possible. Where is he? I finally asked. Where is Marcus? Sarah smiled. He's been closer than you think, Mum Rosa. He's been watching you for 2 years, watching you play grandmother to Timothy, watching you build your perfect life while he suffered through his broken one. The doorbell rang. Kevin and Sarah looked at each other. Kevin went to answer it. When he opened the door, I heard a voice I hadn't heard in over 3 decades, but would have recognized anywhere. A voice that sounded like my own father, like my own younger self, like the ghost of everyone I'd left behind. Hello, Kevin. Is she here? She's here, Marcus. She knows everything. And then my firstborn son walked into the kitchen, looked at me sitting on the floor with tears streaming down my face. And I saw in his eyes the same question I'd been asking myself for 33 years. How do you forgive the unforgivable? Marcus stood in the doorway, and I saw my own face staring back at me, older, masculine, hardened by years I hadn't been there for, but unmistakably mine. He had my father's eyes, my mother's strong jaw, and a scar above his left eyebrow that I'd never know the story of. He was 42 years old. I'd missed every single one of those years. Hello, Rosa. He wouldn't call me mother. That word wasn't his to use. You look older than in the photos. I pulled myself up from the floor, using the counter for support. My whole body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Marcus. His name felt strange in my mouth, like a word from a language I'd forgotten. I never stopped thinking about you. His laugh was bitter, sharp. Is that supposed to comfort me? You thought about me while you were building your bakery empire, while you were raising Kevin in your nice house, while you were being the perfect wife to Robert. He stepped closer. Did you think about me on my birthdays? Did you wonder if I was being fed, being held, being loved? Every day, my voice cracked. Every single day of my life. Then why didn't you come back? The question exploded out of him, raw and desperate. Why didn't you find me? I was in the system, Rosa. I was findable. But you never looked. The truth sat in my throat like broken glass. Because I was ashamed. Because I was a coward. Because I built a new life. And I was terrified that going back would destroy everything. I met his eyes. And because I knew that nothing I could say or do would ever make up for what I'd done. Sarah was watching us like we were a play she'd written. Kevin stood next to Marcus, and I realized they'd become brothers in their shared anger at me, bonded by my failures. Marcus pulled out a chair and sat down, his movements controlled, deliberate. Let me tell you about my life, Rosa, about the life you gave me when you gave me away. Marcus, you don't have to, Kevin started, but Marcus held up his hand. No, she needs to hear this. He looked at me. The couple who adopted me, the Fowlers, they wanted a baby to fix their marriage. Surprise, it didn't work. By the time I was 4, they were screaming at each other every night. By the time I was 7, Mr. Fowler was using his belt on me for any reason he could find. Mrs. Fowler started drinking, and I learned that love was something other children got, but not me. I pressed my hand to my mouth, but couldn't stop the sob that escaped. I was 12 when they sent me back into foster care, said I was too difficult. I went through 6 different homes in 4 years. Some were okay. Some were worse than the Fowlers. I aged out of the system at 18 with $300 and a garbage bag full of clothes. His voice was steady, factual, like he was reading someone else's story. I tried college, dropped out, worked construction, got injured, spent 2 years homeless. Finally got my life together enough to work as a building supervisor. He pulled out his phone and showed me another photo. A young woman with kind eyes holding baby Timothy. This is Angela. was Angela. She died in a car accident when Timothy was 6 months old. Same age I was when you left me. His voice finally broke, and I stood at her funeral, holding my son, and I thought, at least I'm not like my mother. At least I won't abandon him. The words hit me like physical blows. So when I finally found you 2 years ago, when I tracked down your new name, your new life, your bakery, your perfect family, I was angry. So angry I couldn't see straight. He looked at Kevin. I found Kevin first, told him everything. And you want to know what he said? Kevin's voice was quiet. I said it couldn't be true, that my mother would never do that. But then I showed him the proof, Marcus continued, and I asked him a question. What would hurt Rosa Chen more than anything? Taking her business? No. Taking her money? No. Making her feel what I felt, the terror of a child abandoned, the helplessness of knowing someone you love is in danger and you can't protect them. That would hurt her. I looked at Kevin. And you agreed to this? You helped him? Kevin's eyes filled with tears. I needed to know if you were the person I thought you were, or the person Marcus said you were. So we tested you. We pushed you on the bakery to create stress. We used Dad's condition, which we didn't cause, Mum, but we definitely used, to create chaos. And last night we gave you the ultimate test. You let your father abandon a 3-year-old child in a dangerous neighborhood as a test. My voice rose. Timothy could have been hurt. He could have been taken, trafficked, killed. But he wasn't, Sarah interrupted, because we had Kevin's cousin Diego watching from across the street the entire time. Timothy was never actually in danger. We just needed you to think he was. Marcus leaned forward. We needed to see what you'd do. Would you blame Timothy? Would you blame Robert? Would you protect yourself first? Or would you protect the child? His voice softened slightly. And you did protect him. You brought him to your home. You held him. You fought for him. You did for him what you didn't do for me. The room fell silent except for the sound of my crying. So what now? I finally asked. You've made your point. You've shown me my failures. What do you want from me, Marcus? He stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. For 2 years, I wanted revenge. I wanted you to suffer. But then, something strange happened. I started watching you with Timothy, really watching, and I saw something I didn't expect. He turned around, and his eyes were wet. I saw you be the grandmother you never got to be a mother to me. I saw you patient with him, gentle with him. I saw you light up when he walked in a room. And I realized something that made me even angrier. You'd learned. You'd become capable of the love you couldn't give me. Someone else got the version of you that I needed. Marcus, I started, but he held up his hand. But then last night, after we executed the plan, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Timothy crying for his grandmother, about the look on his face when the police found him. And I realized I'd become what I hated most, someone willing to hurt a child to make a point. His voice broke completely now. I'd used my own son the same way you used me, as a tool, as a sacrifice for a bigger goal. He sank back into the chair and put his head in his hands. I don't know how to forgive you, Rosa. I don't know if I can. But I also don't know how to keep hating you without becoming something worse than what you were. I walked slowly to him, giving him time to tell me to stop. He didn't. I knelt down in front of him. This man who was my son, this stranger who was my blood. Marcus, I can't undo what I did. I can't give you back the childhood you deserved. I can't take away the pain of the Fowlers, or the foster homes, or the years you spent wondering why you weren't enough. I was crying so hard I could barely speak. But I can tell you the truth. I was 21 and broken and drowning, and I made a choice that I thought would give you a better life. I was wrong. I was so wrong. And I have carried the weight of that choice every day since. I reached out slowly and touched his hand. He didn't pull away. I named you Marcus after my grandfather. He was the kindest man I ever knew. I held you for 20 minutes before they took you, and I memorized your face. I counted your fingers and your toes. I told you I loved you. And then I let them take you because I truly believed, that someone else could give you what I couldn't. You should have tried, he whispered. You should have at least tried to keep me. I know. You're right. I should have. Kevin's voice came from behind us. I'm sorry, Mum. I'm sorry, Marcus. This whole thing got out of control. Using Dad's condition, the plan with Timothy. It was wrong. I was angry at you for lying to me my whole life, and I let that anger make me cruel. Sarah was crying now too. I pushed for the bakery takeover because we're desperate for money, but the rest of it, hurting Robert, traumatizing Timothy, that wasn't about money. That was about punishing you, and it was wrong. I looked around at my fractured family, 2 sons, one I'd raised and one I'd abandoned, a daughter-in-law who'd helped orchestrate my pain, a husband upstairs who barely knew what day it was anymore, and a grandson who was the innocent victim of all of our sins. What do we do now? I asked. How do we fix this? Marcus wiped his eyes. I don't know if we can fix it, but maybe we can stop breaking it more. I want to know you, I said. I want to know everything about you. I want to be in Timothy's life, not because I've been tricked into it, but because he's my grandson, and I love him. I want— My voice failed me. What, Rosa? What do you want? I want a chance. Not to be forgiven. I don't deserve that. But a chance to show you that I see you, that I see what my choices cost you, that I'm here now, even though I wasn't then. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then, I don't trust you. I don't know if I ever will. But Timothy deserves better than to be caught in the middle of this war. So maybe we try. For him. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was a door left slightly open instead of slammed shut. Over the next few months, things changed slowly. Painfully. Marcus started bringing Timothy to the bakery on Saturday mornings. We'd make cookies together, the 3 of us. 4 generations of pain trying to bake something sweet. Marcus would tell me small stories about his life, testing to see if I could handle the truth. I listened. I cried. I answered his questions honestly, even when the answers made me look terrible. Kevin went to therapy. Real therapy. Not the kind where you perform healing for an audience. He and I had hard conversations about the lies I'd told him, about the half-siblings he never knew existed. I helped him refinance his debt honestly this time, and he stopped trying to take the bakery. Robert's dementia progressed. Most days he didn't remember the night with Timothy or the confusion Marcus and Kevin had planted. But sometimes, in his clear moments, he'd hold my hand and say, "Our family is complicated, Rosa, but it's still our family." Sarah apologized to Robert in a moment when he was lucid enough to understand. She meant it, I think. Sometimes people do terrible things, not because they're monsters, but because they're desperate and scared and willing to hurt others to feel less hurt themselves. I found my other 2 children, Marcus's older siblings, now in their 50s, with families of their own. That reunion was different, harder in some ways, easier in others. They'd grown up with my mother, and while they were angry I'd left, they at least had memories of me trying before I failed. We were all learning to live with the truth. Families are built on choices. and some choices leave scars that never fully heal. But maybe healing isn't the goal. Maybe the goal is just to stop inflicting new wounds. One Saturday morning, 6 months after the night at the club, Marcus and I stood in the bakery kitchen, teaching Timothy how to shape dinner rolls. Marcus's hands guided Timothy's small ones, showing him how to cup the dough and roll it in smooth circles. "You're good at this," I told Marcus. "Patient?" He looked at me. "I learned from watching you with Timothy. Before I knew you were being manipulated into loving him, before I knew the truth, I watched you be gentle with him when he spilled things. I watched you answer his questions like they mattered. And I thought, that's what a parent should be." "You're a better father than I was a mother," I said. "Maybe." He formed another role. Or maybe I'm just further along in learning how to love past my own pain. Timothy held up his misshapen roll proudly. "Look, Grandma, I made this." "It's perfect," I told him, kissing the top of his head. And in that moment, standing in my bakery with my grandson and my son, my abandoned son who'd come back to teach me about consequences and forgiveness and the long road between the two, I understood something important. We don't get to undo our worst mistakes. We only get to live with them honestly and hope that honesty creates something better than the lies we told ourselves. That night, I went home to Robert. Kevin stopped by with dinner. Marcus called to say Timothy wanted me to know he'd eaten all his vegetables. Sarah texted a photo of a recipe she thought I'd like. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. There was too much pain, too much history, too many years that couldn't be recovered. But it was real. And real was better than the beautiful lie I'd been living before. Friend, thank you for staying with me through this whole story. I know it wasn't easy to hear, but I needed to tell it because I believe that our worst moments don't have to define us, but they should teach us. The question isn't whether we've failed the people we love. Most of us have. The question is what we do after that failure. Do we hide from it? Or do we face it and try to build something true from the broken pieces? If this story touched you, if it made you think about your own family, your own choices, your own chances at redemption, please hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to face a mistake you thought you'd buried? How did you find your way back? I've got another story lined up for you. One about a woman who discovered her best friend had been stealing from her for 15 years. It's there on your screen now. I hope you'll click it and let me share that journey with you too. This is Rosa, reminding you that family is complicated. Forgiveness is complicated. But showing up honestly is simple. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. See you in the next one.